Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Madness Cafe podcast. Jennifer and I are very excited to welcome our first guest. We're very excited. This is a friend of ours from high school and from the swim team who is amazing, if we do say so ourselves. And she has written a book, which we are very excited about. It's called It's Healing Time for the BodyMind of Black Women. And for those of you who can see, I'm holding up the book right now. We will put a link to the book in our show notes. It's on Amazon. So everybody go out and buy this book. It is amazing. And so our guest is the lovely and talented and very smart and now author Tien Sydnor-Campbell. And I'll tell you guys a little bit about her, and then Tien, if you want to give a little more backstory, that would be great. Tien is a medically retired body-centered psychotherapist with experience as a certified massage therapist for 25 plus years, a specialist in recognition that the body and mind are not separate in healthcare. Her role has been to empower clients in managing body-mind imbalances. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Tien Sydnor-Campbell.
Thank you guys so much for having me, Raquel and Jennifer. This is very exciting. I listened to the first podcast in the car with my daughter, and when you were mentioning what you envisioned, you know, down the road a year later, and all, how many listeners? Was it 10,000?
500,000.
500,000. 500,000 listeners, and my book has become a bestseller. Little tears started forming in the corner of my eye. My daughter was like, oh, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I could totally see it though. I could totally see it. So yay. If there's anything I want to add, it's that I am 27 years married and have a 26-year-old and a 23-year-old, and I am going to be a grandmother.
Yay, that's exciting.
November.
Congratulations.
Yes, first grand. I'm not going to be called grandma though. I'm going to be BB.
Okay.
And my husband will be Baba.
Okay.
Baba.
The baby will come to visit BB and Baba. Yes.
Got it. Got it.
And I have a little dog who might make an appearance because he doesn't know how to shut up. He's
that's okay.
He's a little terrorist, Yorkie, which we think he's supposed to be 100% Yorkie, but I think he's a Yorkie mixed with a Chihuahua because he's got a Chihuahua's attitude like nobody's business. So yeah, that's it.
Well, maybe he needs some body-mind balancing as well.
Man, you know, I have given him massages. I tried getting him calmed, giving him belly rubs. He never calms down. Like the only time he's calm is when he's resting underneath my knees. That's it. Curls up right behind my knees, and I don't know why. That's always been his spot. Maybe it's because they're titanium and he knows that it's it could always use some healing, but that's where he snuggles up, right behind my knees all the time.
All right.
That's when he's calm.
I do have a feeling that animals do tend to lay on us where we are in need of healing. I do get that, and I've experienced that many times myself. So that's awesome.
Almost everyone that I know with rheumatoid arthritis that has pets, their animals do the same thing. Yeah. Whether it's cats or dogs, they're like, they'll come and lay on your wrists, they'll lay behind your knees, and he does that too. He will put his chin on my wrist, which I'm like, you're stopping me from moving, but my wrists also hurt. So I have a feeling that that's what he's doing. Yes, dogs are. Yeah. Animals are awesome.
Our little friend energy healers. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
And I read what you wrote in the book, but I think it's really important for our listeners to hear. In your title, you have BodyMind of Black Women, and in the women, the final vowel is an X. What does that mean for our listeners who like myself may not know what that signifies?
So the X is meant to be inclusive of femme and women who may not have a uterus. Anyone, and I put an X. Some people put a Y, but I put an X so that it's, you know, X means that you can put anything in there. You can put an A, you can put a Y, you can put OMB. There are lots of ways to be a woman. And I like the word woman because I believe that I'm a woman, and I just like making sure that everyone felt included. I just wanted to make sure others felt included. While I don't say, and if you've got a throughout the book, I just wanted to make sure that that's how we were addressed.
Yeah, high respect for that. And my kids are always teasing me because every time anybody says girls, I say women. We're women. Yeah. We're not girls. We're women.
Yeah.
I think I make a big deal about it.
I actually started my own hashtag. You know, they have Black Girl Magic, which I love, but I started Black Woman Brilliance a couple of years ago because that's how I want to be referred. I love magic, but Black Woman Brilliance is what I love. So,
and I love girls, but girls are girls, and we're women.
Right. And I think the other piece of this is sometimes I think people who don't have daughters don't think about that. I think when you have daughters, it's like, no, I'm not a girl, I'm a woman. The girl is what I had. Of course, she's a woman now, but I like to differentiate because when you refer to me as a girl, it doesn't respect what I've been through.
Agreed.
Right. And it's infantilizing as well. Right. I mean, we are grown women. We are not children. So girl refers to a female child. We are not children anymore.
Yes. And that's just my personal preference. I know some people are like, girl, please. And I'm like, okay, whatever, use whatever you feel like.
I think it's good that you give voice to that and that you're communicating that and you're opening that up so that people can communicate for them what works for them, by putting the X in there.
Yeah. I have quite a few clients and partners of clients that are not they're gender fluid, okay, or they're gender non-conforming, they're masculine of center women, and they're feminine of center, and they're femme. And so I've gotten more inclusive in my language as I've had clients that have exposed me to different words. And sometimes I still mess up, but I'm learning.
Good. Well, let me jump in really quick. It sort of brings me to what you talk about a lot in your book about compassionate communication and about, standing up for yourself and using your voice to advocate for yourself. And that being one of the reasons why you wrote the book and why you wrote it as a workbook. Can you talk to that a little bit about Black women and healthcare, basically being an advocate for yourself and using your voice in the interest of your own healthcare?
Interestingly, so since I've been medically retired, I have become an advocate for rheumatoid arthritis sufferers. And that has meant joining different organizations that either have me going to Capitol Hill and trying to lobby for legislation that will help us have access to medications, or stop insurance companies from these step therapy, which stops you from being able to go right to the therapy that your doctor thinks you need. Or if you switch an insurance company, for instance, in Pennsylvania, you used to have to, if you had an insurance carrier, right, and you were already on a medication, if you switched carriers because like your job switched carriers, you could be told to go back to a previous step in the therapies that you were already on because they hadn't had you go through that process. So they could change your medication and your routine without really consulting you, just kind of like, we're not going to approve it until you go through these steps. So I started advocating like that. And then because I'm a busybody, I still was working I was trying to still see clients as a psychotherapist. I got involved with a group with an association, National Association of Black Sexuality and Relationships. And they had an annual conference. And in that annual conference, they talk about Black sexuality and relationships. And what I didn't see represented was Black women, disabled Black women, and sexual health. So I wrote an article to their journal. And once it got published in the journal, I was like, I need to keep writing. And I presented it at one of their annual conferences in Florida. So yeah, I didn't have academia behind me. I'm just like an individual who's like concerned, and I did all this research, and the health disparities for Black women in healthcare is already right. It's already awful. But if you add disability to that, it goes even deeper and worse. Black disabled women are more likely to be sexually abused and assaulted in their relationships, including financial as well. They're more likely to not get the treatment that they need. They estimate something like 40% of recommended treatment doesn't even happen for Black women. So you've got a recommended treatment and then how Black women are treated. And it's estimated that it's like 40% of all treatment for all conditions doesn't get the recommended treatment. And it's because of stereotypes. It's because of physician internal beliefs, things that they might have even been taught in med school. There was one piece of research where they had done interviews with med students, and this is in the last, I want to say this research was done in the 2010s. So we're not even talking about really old. Something like 60, 65%, some astronomical number believed that Black people had different skin that was tougher.
I've heard that.
Than white skin. And so the considerations that you make for skin were just, it was like, well, their skin is tougher, so they don't feel as much. They don't feel the pain as much, or because the bruising doesn't happen, that the bruise doesn't happen in the same way or at the same time. So like for me, when I go to get infusions, and I go every 3 months now. I used to have a medication where I'd go once a month, and I go to the infusion clinic just like everybody who's getting chemotherapy, and I'd get my chemotherapy. It's not labeled chemotherapy, it's labeled chemotherapy, but it's not like for cancer. So I go every few months now, but there are some of the nurses that don't know how to find a vein on my arm. And I'm not exactly dark skinned. They're like looking and looking and looking instead of feeling. And then let me tell you, I have been jabbed and jabbed and jabbed. And so I have preferences for my nurses. If they are not of color, I need to know that they know how to find a vein. Like, are you sure you know how to find it? Because if you're sitting there scrapping around and then you go digging, I end up with an arm looking like I'm an intravenous drug user. My veins have all but disappeared from the surface at this point, after several years of this kind of thing. But yeah, it's advocating has become critically important. And the reason that I wrote the book is because I wanted everyone to know that you're not alone.
Yeah,
right.
You're not alone in this suffering. And while the book is for everyone, I put Black women in the title because I wanted us to pick up the book.
Yeah,
right.
Totally get it. One of the words you used, you said you were an advocate, but you were a reluctant advocate.
Yeah.
That in the book. Why did you feel the reluctance, and has that changed for you?
I was reluctant at first because I did not want anyone to think that because I was speaking out that I would be targeted. And some of that targeting for me looks like insurance companies or the disability, Social Security disability, saying, oh, well, you're up making speeches, you're not disabled. You know what I mean? Like, you're
So
up
you're
making
not
speeches.
supposed to have a
Oh,
life.
I got denied long-term disability
Wow.
based on BS. And I was totally disabled. I don't even want to go into the whole long story, but I was denied because it was like, well, you did this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, wow. So I have a good day because I've taken extra pain meds and rested for 3 days before I did this walk. After the walk, they were like, yeah, well, you did that, so you're not disabled. And I'm like, do you not know that I was in bed for 3 days after that 5K that took me 2.5 hours for me to do, where normally pre-sick, I did that in, 30 minutes. So
Yeah, my belief is the insurance companies don't care about our humanness. They're looking for any and every reason not to give the benefit that was promised.
well, and that's the other thing,
Yeah.
because you have to really fight for it. It's
Mhm.
like when you stick your neck out, you have to know that someone might be chopping. Someone might come trying to chop. That was one of the biggest reasons that I was reluctant. I
Yeah.
didn't necessarily want everybody to be like, I didn't hide the fact that I had rheumatoid arthritis, because anybody who knew me knew, but I wasn't advertising it. So when I started really getting active and really saying something, you know, I was reluctant, but I'm so glad. I am no longer reluctant. I will talk to anybody about anything at any time, anywhere. I've worked with 3 different pharmaceutical companies over the last 8 years on patient-centered research programs. Some of them patient related to like patient lifestyle, like living and support, as well as creating protocols for treatment that are centered around like what's best, what are best practices, how do we address this, or are we hitting the mark when we talk like this, and then also making sure that there's patient-centered language in the research. So I've done quite a bit of talking.
You are a hero for people.
Absolutely. I agree
I
with
want
you,
to make
Jennifer.
sure that people know, and because I also know that a lot of people are undiagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis.
Mhm.
And especially for me, I had a cousin who, from the moment that she got sick, she was sick like me. And I was like, you have rheumatoid arthritis. Well, she didn't have the physical markers in her blood. And so she went for years not getting any treatment.
Terrible.
Because the doctors would say, oh, well, maybe it's, in your head. Oh, well, it's not this because we don't have it in the blood. And I would just say, every time I'd be like, I know you have it, keep fighting. They finally gave her the recognition. She was able to get the diagnosis because there are what they call non-seropositive rheumatoid arthritis sufferers. There are people who don't have the markers in their blood, but they are very much suffering from rheumatoid arthritis because every other symptom is there, plain as day: suffering, not being able to breathe, you name it.
Why is it important for a person to get the diagnosis? Why does that matter?
The diagnosis allows you to have a starting point for treatment. And if you don't have a diagnosis, you can't get treated for anything. They might give you something to treat a symptom, but it's not necessarily going to be the thing. It might not be the level of medication that you need to treat what's actually going on.
Got it.
So, it's not so much, it's like when you have a label, just like when we name things, we name them so that we have a place to put it in a box, right? And not that we want to live in a box, but just so that you have a place to start. So when and autoimmune diseases they're actually, I feel like, increasing. And I know that it has something to do with an environment, the world we live in. It's the food, it's the water, it's the air quality. Some of these things have made an impact, and our immune system can't doesn't know when to turn on and turn off. And so we end up with these autoimmune conditions. I also know, like, there are a lot of people who are not diagnosed and they're not getting treated the way that they need to be. Even my father, who also has rheumatoid arthritis. So I knew that that was a possibility from the time that I got sick, that that's what it was, but he had a very mild form. As he has aged, his rheumatoid arthritis has gotten more detrimental. And when I went to the doctors with him, he goes to the Veterans Administration. When I went to the doctors, they couldn't believe that I was on the medications that I was on. Like, oh, it must really be bad. And I'm thinking, why isn't he on these medications? Like, why are you still at this level when he is in so much pain and his body is crinkling? Like, there are medications to treat that. What are you waiting for? So, yeah. I know from personal experience that there are quite a few people that aren't getting the treatment that they need.
So can you talk a little bit about rheumatoid arthritis, just for people who don't know? Is it just with your joints, or is it more than that?
Okay. So the difference between when you say arthritis, people automatically go to joints, right? So there are lots of different types of rheumatic conditions, which are the ones that are autoimmune. So rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease that, in addition to attacking the joints, it also attacks your heart, your lungs, your eyes, can mess with your intestines, messes with your nail beds. And then after you've got that, so what else is there, right? Oh, and sometimes I end up with cricoiditis and I can't swallow. And you have an increased chance of having heart disease, having a heart attack and stroke, just because you have rheumatoid arthritis.
As if
so this is not something that it's just like, oh, my joints get attacked and they're falling apart on the inside and they look real crazy and they act real stupid and they cause my fingers to curl, you know, the deformities that you're used to seeing with rheumatoid arthritis. But yeah, it's also systemic. It causes the most abominable fatigue like you would not believe. And fatigue that's probably one of the most devastating parts of having the disease, is wanting to be able to get up and go. And in your head, you're like, oh, I can get up and go. And your body's like, no, ma'am, no, you will not. In fact, go sleep right now. That was actually one of the reasons I had to retire, because I was literally falling asleep on my patients.
Oh.
So I'm in the office and I'm working in community mental health, and I'm literally like nodding off in session, not because I'm bored, but because my body is like, go to sleep. I could be on the telephone with my friends, and all of a sudden my body's like, nap time. And I would just be knocked out. So I had to really I had to stop driving for several months. I didn't drive. I didn't do anything, because I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to stay awake.
One of the things you mentioned in your book, you talked about it being an invisible disease because you look fabulous, your skin is glowing, you're speaking in public, and yet you're suffering from something people can't see.
They can't see it.
They can't see it. They don't relate to it. So it's not in their mind. How does that translate to your everyday life for you?
It can be tough psychologically. And that's the other thing. It can cause chronic illness, causes anxiety and depression by itself. So that's another thing that many rheumatoid arthritis sufferers deal with. The anxiety of not knowing if you're going to be able to do something when you go to do it. Just because I could do it yesterday doesn't mean I can do it today. And if I can do it today and tomorrow, it doesn't mean I can do it on Friday. What it does is change who you are. When I go about the world, like, I've got my handicap placard, right? If I'm having a day where you're not going to be able to tell that I really don't have a lot of walking in me, and I need to use my handicap placard because I need that parking spot to be right in the front. When I go in the store, I need to come out, get my car, and I need to go home. If I've got enough energy to do that, right? You worry about people looking at you sideways. Like, there's nothing wrong with her. You can't tell that I've got titanium knees and that sometimes they're paining me. I'm not gonna always walk with a limp because sometimes it's not bothering me enough to limp, but it still can be painful. It's like a perception thing. So you have to kind of ignore everybody else and just go about your business and try not to care. But you definitely, I mean, we live in a society that's always looking. We got the looky-loos. We're just now starting to realize or recognize that all disabilities are not visible. Some are very much invisible, and they are mental and they are physical. And you cannot see that someone has got a pacemaker and they, you know, they need to be able to get to the parking spot quickly, right?
Yeah.
You don't know. And, you know, I remember when I was first diagnosed and I was really struggling with walking and staying up, my sister would make me get in the wheelchair. We'd go to a grocery store and she'd say, get in the wheelchair. And I'm like, I don't need the wheelchair. Well, one day we get to Target and I'm like, I don't need a wheelchair. I'm like really defiant because, you know, I just did a triathlon several months ago. So I'm going to get my strength back. I get to the back of the store and I have not one step left. She had to go to the front, get the scooter, bring it back to me so that I could finish what I needed to do to get out of there. It was, I had nothing left. There was no gas in the tank. Gone, it's gone. And you can't even explain that. So the only people that really recognize this are other people who have it. So I have also been able to get involved and meet some of the most amazing people who also have this disease. And we really support each other. It was so wonderful the first time I had a meeting. And they had brought us from all over the country. They brought us together for this meeting and we were all in the same room. And it was the first time any of us had ever met. And I met some of my best friends in this world from that first meeting. In fact, by the end of that first weekend, well, actually by that night, there were people who had just met us that were saying, how long have you guys known each other? And we're like, we just met today. Or we just met yesterday. You know, this weekend is amazing because we really we can tell each other's story. Like when I'm having a bad thumb day, when you get to a point where you can't write your name without pain, people don't know because you can't see that.
Yeah.
Cannot see that. So yeah.
It's not to me, and maybe I'm wrong because I don't have it, but it's not so much the looking, and maybe the looking is bothersome, but it's the judging that goes along with the looking.
Yeah, it's the judging.
Right.
Judging, like making assumptions about what's going on and telling you who you are.
Oh man, when I had my knees replaced, I had a towering walker because my wrists are bad, so I couldn't use crutches. So I had a towering walker that looked like I was about to lift off into space, right? Looked like I had my personal rocket. So I'm walking around with my walker and they're like, oh, you got, you know, what'd you do? You were kickboxing? And I'm like, yeah, no, I have rheumatoid arthritis. And, you know, the look on their face is like, yeah, no, just because I look like I'm athletic and whatever, and yeah, I'm recovering from surgery, but this is something that's with me. So if I use my cane, my walker, if I use the wheelchair when I go out in public, I have gotten to a point now, because I've had it for 11 years. I've been diagnosed for 11 years now. I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't care as much. I still get, you know, kind of like that little bit, but you know, I figure when they look at me and they see me in the wheelchair or whatever with my cane, they're like, man, she looks good with that cane. Yes.
And you do. You do look good.
I'm smooth with it.
There you go. Well, it sounds like it's not just one thing and it's not all physical. It's a whole constellation of issues and symptoms and feelings and all that. So, you know, there has to be more than one type of approach, a whole plan, right? And you go into some of that, well, a lot of that in the book with, you know, you talk about diet and you talk about other modalities and, you know, Western medicine, yes, but also some Eastern medicine. How did you come to the plan and the sort of web of modalities that works for you? How did you get to that?
So that's an excellent question. because I started off in holistic health, when I was 23 and my plan was to become an architect, and then I had to leave school because my financial aid was messed up and college was way too much money. I went to Hampton.
Mm-hmm.
It was
still is way too much money.
astronomical.
Yeah.
And when I left, I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to go back to Hampton. And then I skipped around to a few other colleges, but then I landed in Atlanta and I was working. My sister had moved to Atlanta, my older sister, 7, moved to Atlanta, and I moved down there with her and then ended up working for a chiropractor. I'd never even heard of a chiropractor at the time. This is 1993. I'm sure we had them all over Kalamazoo. No one in my family was using one. Well, a massage therapist came in and gave massages once a week. And when I first met her, I was like, no way, that's not a career. You got to be kidding me. Like, there's no way that that's real. And she exposed me to it. And then I ended up going to visit the massage school. And at the open house, I knew the moment I got in that room for the first time, talked to people, and they gave us a demonstration, I was like, I'm home. This is where I need to be. And I went
Your
and got
body knew.
massage therapist, and that was the trajectory that put me in, on the path to body-centered psychotherapy. So while I was a massage therapist, I had clients having somato-emotional releases with me.
Mm-hmm.
I was bringing up the issues in their tissues, and not all of my classmates did. I don't know if it's something that I was just tuned into, or I don't know. Either way, it became a specialty for me. So for years, that's my specialty. Psychology of the body, issues in the tissues, somato-emotional release. I did it through craniosacral, deep tissue, Rolfing-centered techniques, Reiki, reflexology, you name it, I got certified in it. Aromatherapy, like I said, you name it, I got certified in it. I had thousands of hours of certifications.
Wow.
And then I was tired of sending people to their therapist with these somato-emotional issues that they needed to work out, that they needed to finish processing with their therapist. Therapists didn't know what the heck I was doing. And so the people must not have been able to articulate what I was saying to them. Like, so when you started crying, what did it make you think of? Well, it made me think of my childhood, and this special thing. And okay, you need to go see your therapist about that. Like, that's how I was trained to work in tandem with a therapist. That was one of the pieces of our training at the Atlanta School of Massage. So you work in tandem with therapists, but none of the therapists that my clients were seeing could really figure it out. So I ended up going back to school and getting my degree and getting my master's in mental health counseling so I could do body-centered psychotherapy.
Okay.
Then I got sick. So this whole time I'm in holistic health. I'm, doing my workout. I'm training for a triathlon. I'm still doing all of my holistic work, and I get sick with this. And I'm like, maybe I'm supposed to figure out how to cure this, right? So I'm on a path to figure out how to cure this. And as I'm doing this, I'm realizing, like, I got to get in and see my therapist. I need psych meds because I'm suicidal behind this disease. Like this, like I went from flying high on top of the world to like crash, burnout, like boom, nothing. And I slowly started using my own techniques. I had to remind myself what I know, because sometimes you don't use stuff and you lose stuff. You start doing psychotherapy and you don't use as much as the body work. Had to go back, start getting my massages again. I had to incorporate my vitamins, and I got into meditation and doing gentle yoga for myself, restorative yoga, and using every technique that I already knew in order to help support what I also needed to do with regular medicine, with Western medicine. And it works for me. And I think that's the reason that you see me, that I look like nothing is wrong.
Right.
I still have to manage the things that aren't. But I do it because I know part of it is like, well, if I'm going to be sick and I have to lay down, then I'm going to sick and lay down. But when I get up, I'm going to have to do something. Like I have to do stuff to keep my brain going too. So I think that's part of it. I think my constitution just won't allow me to just kind of sit and like turn into a puddle of mud.
Good.
I just don't think my constitution.
Right. Well, and I think it probably, well, I think it helps too that you have such a good support system around you. You speak so highly of your family and specifically of your husband in your book. So I think that's probably something that's really important for you too.
It is. Yeah, I picked the right one, baby. I picked the right one.
Good for you.
Y'all just have no idea because that's a whole nother.
I don't.
But
I don't either.
It's the right one for me because I'm a doozy, right? I'm a doozy.
I bet you are.
But you're worth it.
Hey, I must be. But I also have cultivated my relationships with my family, my sisters, 7, but she's like all the way in California, so she's not physically here with me anymore the way she was. But when I was having surgery, they came over and cleaned my house and made it so that there was room for me to get around with my stuff. And my kids, because they were teenagers when I got sick, I had to basically train them how to support me. Right. When I needed my son to help me get dressed in the morning, he did it, because he was the one that was home. And when Tisa was in school, he was the one that was making me dinner. Everybody was really making me breakfast, making me lunch, making me dinner, especially those days where I literally, if I got out of bed, it was to go to the bathroom and get right back in the bed. And if I couldn't raise my head, because sometimes my head hurts so bad that I'm flat in the bed. So like I'm like eating on my side so that my head doesn't get worse. And that happens, and it still happens, but everybody understands that this is my disease. And when I can get up and go and do and move, then I do. And when I can't, I don't. So if you don't see me, you don't hear from me, it's because I'm laid up. Can't even hold the phone.
Wow. I want to back up a second to this idea about therapy. You're a therapist. One of my best friends does work very similar to yours. In fact, we're going to interview her next week. But you said in your book, everybody needs a therapist.
Everybody.
Do you believe that? And if you do, and I do, but if you do, why does everyone need a therapist?
I think everyone needs a therapist because they need to have someone that is, one, a trained ear to listen to you, but 2, someone who can objectively hand you back your story.
Yeah.
Because your friends will want to support you, make you look at what you did, cause yourself pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And and the crazy thing is, for a while I didn't have my own therapist because my friends were therapists. So I have a cadre of friends that are also therapists. And I'm using them, and then I'm realizing, you guys like me, you love me. I need somebody who doesn't.
Yeah.
To listen to me so that I can figure out some of these things that I want to work on, because I might be in my own way from my healing. And I had a lot of emotional work to do. I had a lot of emotional work and still do. So
do you think emotional work that's needed causes illness? Because I have heard that theory before in a lot of the reading that I've done. Or do you think they're not connected?
I believe they're totally connected, but I don't want to say it's causation.
Yeah.
Maybe there's correlation, but not causation. I think that there's definitely a connection. And that's pretty much the fundamentals of my book. It's like, if it's in your mind, it's in your body. So every thought that you have has a molecular structure. Otherwise you couldn't have it, which means it has a cellular imprint. which means it exists in the actual now.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
The
there.
issues in your tissues.
You got it. And it's my exposure to that was way back when I was in massage school, and one of my classmates had the Dancing Woolly Masters by Gary Zukav. And that was his first book. And I was like, okay, I'm not there yet, because it was total quantum physics and I could not get it. So I kept going back to that book year after year. Like, I'm going to get this book. I'm going to understand what he's talking about. And then, Seat of the Soul. And I was exposed to Candace Pert's work on the molecules of emotion, her research. That was like, that's it. That's where it is. I had always approached it from the psychology of the body standpoint, which, there's like your defensive postures and your cowering postures and those emotional things that you can see in a physicality. Whether someone is built up their defenses and their back is strong and they're looking like this, right? Or they're walking like this, or they're walking in a room and they're all over the place and they're loose and those kinds of things. But when it got to Candace Pert's molecules of emotion, it was like, bing, all this goes together. And then during that, at some Carolyn Miss Anatomy of the Spirit came out, and she really she did kind of the same thing. And then I had done some other research work with Black healers, Queen Afua, Dick Gregory, Layla Africa, just seeing how everything goes together. And you cannot separate the mind from the body, not in health or in healthcare. And that's the problem that we have with healthcare right now, is we treat them as they are separate entities, but really they're one. And you cannot say, okay, I'm going to give you this medicine and it's going to make you better, if you are still walking around with the same mental, emotional issues that are also residing in those same tissues. And that's how I came to it.
Wow. I want to be respectful of your time, Tien. So I want to ask one more question before we start to wrap things up.
I have like 100 more questions.
I know.
We're out of time.
We could talk for hours and hours and hours. So maybe we will have you back.
I think I probably should come back again.
Yes. Is there anything that we didn't ask you today that you want to speak to?
No, because you asked the questions that needed answering. I'm always of the mind that there's like a plan that's kind of woo. And so the questions that are asked, the ones that need to be asked right now. And Perfect. Having a discussion with you guys has been awesome. And I would like to come back again. And there are definitely more questions to be answered.
Yes, absolutely.
But we don't want to run up everybody's ears with the first one. We want to keep them waiting for more.
Right. And we want them to go and get your book. And
yes, I definitely want them to get the book. Let me just say this about when I was writing it. I wanted it to be something that you could pick up and read a story real quick and maybe do a little work and then set it down and let that marinate.
Right.
Pick it up and you might do a little work and you set it down and you let that marinate. My vision for this, because it's a quick read, is you can go through it real fast, right? Or you could go back and really hopefully if you have a therapist, you can talk to your therapist about some of the stuff that you discovered in your stuff, and you're working on this. I didn't want people to have this thick book next to the bed that's very intimidating. I wanted you to be able to pick it up and be like, yeah, let me read that story one more time, and then read it in just a few minutes and be like, okay, yeah, I got it. Or maybe I need to get it one more time. And let me ask that question to myself again, because sometimes there's more. Life is like peeling back these layers of this onion. Right. When you discover more about yourself, and I'm always still discovering more about myself. I wonder do I do that? And then I'm peeling back the layers, and it's fun. Self-discovery is lovely. I think it has helped in aid my healing, my ability to walk around. I have this disease. It's not going anywhere. Best I can hope for is remission. But I know that remission it's possible, not probable. And I'm okay with it now. I used to be like, no, I'm going to get it. I'm not going to have this anymore. And now I'm like, I'm not resigned to it, but I can live with it because it does inform who I am. And that has made me a different person, but I like who I am. So it's all good.
Well, we love who you are so much. And so much of your energy and personality and just zest for life are in this book.
Brilliance.
Yes, and your Black woman brilliance. It's so much of that comes through in the book.
Good.
So everybody to buy the book. Tien, if you can let everybody know other ways that they can get in touch with you or where they can find you, please go right ahead.
So I'll say this because I'm not reluctant about sharing. I share on Instagram and Facebook. I have BodyMind Philosophy. Those are my handles. And on Twitter, I am BodyMind Consult. I have a blog that I have not written in. I have a YouTube channel that has got 2 videos on. I plan to do some work. But if I get to the point where I'm like, I plan to do it and then I don't get to it because I get sick, it's like, I don't want to give myself the pressure of trying to have content when I might not be able to have anything new to say. I am more active on Instagram and Facebook with my BodyMind Philosophy. I try and put something up there at least once every 2 weeks or so. I'll get on there, I'll scroll, I'll get entertained by my animal videos, and I might buy a couple things, but yeah. So
Tien, you're a superhero. You're a superhuman being. The work that you're doing helps so many people. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I know we'll talk to you again. Thank you so much for being with us today. You're our first guest. We wrote the vision for all of us. So
yes, like I said, brought a tear to my eye.
Let's make it happen. I've got tears in my eyes right now.
Yes.
This was really fun.
Thank you. Yes, this was fantastic. Can't wait to do it again.
Yes. This was so great. Thank you so much. And we will link in the show notes to all of your information and the link to get your book.
Thank you.
This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yep.
Oh, Raquel, that was amazing. Wasn't she great?
God, that was so good. I can't wait for.
She is powerful.
More. She's amazing. I mean, just the force of what she's feeling and what she's doing and how she's helping people. I can't wait for more people to be impacted by her work and her spirit. And yeah, I mean, she's going to help so many people. I'm so excited for her.
The thing that really touched me is that, when she was describing going into Target, it's funny, that's the second Target message we've had so far on the podcast, but I work in retail and I think I've made some judgments about people, and I'll be honest, because that's what this podcast is about. I've worked in retail and I've seen people get into the scooter and I've thought, they should walk. Their health would be so much better if they would walk. This is my judgment I'm putting out there. And now I'm seeing how there's a lot of things we don't know. There's a lot of invisible pain. There's suffering. There are things I just need to shut my mouth and keep my judgment to myself. Actually, I need to learn not to have the judgment.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you're not alone in that. I mean, I've caught myself see somebody park in a handicapped spot and I think that person does not need that spot. Why is that person?
How do we know?
But what do I know? I don't know what that person's situation is. I don't know what they're going through. Why we all have such a limited view of what disability is supposed to look like. You know, we've all got a lot to learn, myself included.
She's a true hero. She helped us learn today. Hopefully she helped our audience learn. I hope she comes back and we learn some more. And boy, I'm so touched. I'm so touched.
This was amazing. This was a great episode, listeners. I hope y'all enjoyed it. And, you know, please reach out to us, you know, talk back to us. Let us know how this landed for you. This was awesome. Bye. Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.